My name is Sophia Chen, and 3 months ago I thought I had everything figured out. At 28, I was about to marry my college sweetheart, start our dream life in Portland, and finally become part of the Mitchell family I'd grown to love over 5 years together. I had picked out baby names, planned our honeymoon in Tuscany, and even started looking at bigger apartments for when we'd expand our family. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. Instead, I got the most humiliating day of my life and a lesson in just how cruel people can be when they think no one's watching. The morning started perfectly. I woke up in the bridal suite at the Cascade Manor, sunlight streaming through the vintage lace curtains. My bridesmaids were buzzing around me like excited butterflies, adjusting my dress, touching up my makeup, and taking endless photos. The dress was everything I dreamed of, a flowing A-line with delicate beadwork that caught the light just right. I felt like I was glowing from the inside out. "You look absolutely radiant," my maid of honor Jessica whispered as she handed me my bouquet of white peonies and eucalyptus. "Derek is going to lose his mind when he sees you." Derek, my Derek, the man who brought me coffee every morning, who learned Mandarin just to talk to my grandmother, who cried during romantic movies when he thought I wasn't looking. We'd been through everything together. College, my father's cancer scare, his mother's drinking problem, graduate school stress. We were supposed to be unbreakable. The ceremony was set for 3 p.m. in the Manor's Rose Garden. 200 guests, including Derek's entire extended family, my relatives who'd flown in from California, and all our friends from college and work. The flowers alone had cost more than my car payment, but Derek's parents had insisted on paying for everything. "Welcome to the family," his mother Patricia had said when we were planning. "Nothing's too good for our future daughter-in-law." At 2:45, I was ready. The photographer had gotten all the getting ready shots, the videographer had interviewed me about how I felt, and the wedding planner gave me the thumbs up. Everything was perfect. The string quartet was playing softly in the garden. Guests were taking their seats, and I could see Derek's groomsmen lined up at the altar through the window. But Derek wasn't there. "Where is he?" I asked Jessica, trying to keep the worry out of my voice. Maybe he was just running late from getting ready with his guys. Maybe he'd had a wardrobe malfunction. Maybe traffic was bad. Jessica checked her phone. "I'm sure he's just..." The wedding planner, a usually unflappable woman named Linda, burst through the door looking pale. "I need to speak with you privately," she said to me, glancing nervously at my bridesmaids. My stomach dropped. "What's wrong? Is Derek okay? Did something happen?" Linda closed the door behind her and took a deep breath. "I'm so sorry, Sophia. Derek, he's not coming. His best man just called. He's gone." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Gone? What do you mean gone? Gone where?" "He left town. Early this morning. He said he couldn't go through with it." The room started spinning. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. "That's impossible. We talked last night. Everything was fine. He was excited. He told me he loved me." Linda's face crumpled with sympathy. "There's more. I'm sorry, but you need to know. He's with someone. His ex-girlfriend. Rachel. Rachel Morrison." The name hit me like a slap. Derek's college girlfriend. The one who'd broken up with him senior year to find herself in Europe. She'd come back to Portland 6 months ago, newly divorced, and suddenly very interested in reconnecting with old friends. Derek had mentioned running into her a few times, saying it was just friendly catch-ups. I'd even encouraged him to be kind to her since she was going through a rough time. He left me for Rachel? The words felt foreign in my mouth, like I was speaking a language I didn't understand. Linda nodded miserably. "His best man said they've been seeing each other for weeks. Derek panicked this morning, and they drove to Seattle together." My legs gave out. I sank into the velvet armchair, my beautiful dress pooling around me like spilled milk. 5 years. 5 years of building a life together, of planning our future, of becoming part of each other's families. And he threw it all away for the woman who'd already broken his heart once. "The guests," I whispered. "Oh God, all those people are out there waiting." "We'll handle the guests," Linda said quickly. "You don't have to worry about that. Patricia is making an announcement now." Patricia. Derek's mother, who'd spent months planning this wedding with me, who'd helped me pick out my dress, who'd told me she was so happy Derek had found someone who truly understood him. What was she thinking right now? What was she telling 200 people about why her son had abandoned his bride? The door opened and Jessica peeked in. Soph? Everyone's asking, what do you want us to tell them? I looked at myself in the full-length mirror. 3 hours ago, I'd been a glowing bride. Now I looked like a ghost in an expensive white dress. My makeup was starting to smudge. My carefully styled hair was coming undone, and my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my bouquet. Tell them the truth, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Tell them Derek decided he loved someone else more. The next hour was a blur of concerned faces, awkward hugs, and whispered conversations. Patricia approached me with tears in her eyes, apologizing over and over for her son's behavior. Derek's father, Robert, looked like he wanted to disappear into the ground. My own parents were furious. My usually calm mother was muttering things in Mandarin that I was pretty sure were not complimentary to Derek's character. But the worst part was the looks. The pitying glances, the whispered conversations that stopped when I walked by, the way people couldn't quite meet my eyes. Some guests had already left, not knowing what else to do. Others lingered awkwardly, as if staying would somehow fix the situation. We should go home, my mother said gently, rubbing my back. There's nothing more to do here. I nodded, but I couldn't seem to move. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it felt like a funeral for the future I thought I was going to have. Hey, take. It was then that I noticed him. Derek's father, Robert, was talking quietly with a man I didn't recognize. Tall, distinguished-looking, with salt and pepper hair and an expensive suit. Something about the way he carried himself suggested wealth and power, but it was his expression that caught my attention. While everyone else looked either pitying or uncomfortable, he looked genuinely angry on my behalf. Who's that? I asked Jessica, nodding toward the stranger. She followed my gaze. I think that's Derek's dad's brother. Marcus Mitchell? The one who owns all those tech companies? I heard he flew in from San Francisco just for the wedding. Marcus Mitchell. I had even heard of him. He was one of those self-made billionaires who'd started with a small software company and built it into an empire. Derek had mentioned his uncle a few times, always with a mixture of admiration and intimidation. They weren't particularly close. Marcus was 15 years older than Robert and moved in completely different circles. As I watched, Marcus glanced over at me. Our eyes met for just a moment, and I saw something there. Not pity, but respect. Like he was seeing me as a person, not just a victim of his nephew's cowardice. Then the moment passed, and I was back to reality. I was still standing in a wedding dress with no wedding, in front of guests who didn't know whether to stay or go, holding a bouquet for a marriage that would never happen. I want to go home, I said finally. I want to get out of this dress and pretend this day never happened. But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't really what I wanted. What I wanted was for Derek to come back and explain that this was all a horrible mistake. What I wanted was to wake up and find out this was just a nightmare. What I wanted was to not feel like the biggest fool in the world for trusting someone who could throw away 5 years without even having the decency to tell me to my face. As my bridesmaids helped me gather my things, and my parents dealt with the logistics of canceling the reception, I caught one more glimpse of Marcus Mitchell. He was shaking his head at something Robert was saying, his jaw tight with what looked like disgust. At least someone in Derek's family had standards. Little did I know that this man, Derek's uncle, the billionaire who'd witnessed my humiliation, would soon become the most important person in my life. But first, I had to figure out how to survive the next 24 hours without completely falling apart. The first week after the wedding was a special kind of hell. I had taken time off work, obviously, expecting to be on my honeymoon in Tuscany. Instead, I was trapped in my studio apartment with nothing but sympathy flowers, unanswered questions, and a credit card bill for a dress I'd never wear again. Derek's things were everywhere. His coffee mug in my sink, his Northwestern University sweatshirt draped over my chair, his stupid fantasy football magazines stacked on my nightstand. Even his toothbrush was still in my bathroom cup, like he might come back any moment and pick up where we left off. On day 3, I finally worked up the courage to call him. It went straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. What was I supposed to say? Hey, remember me? Your fiancé? The one you abandoned at the altar? By day 5, I was ready to burn everything he'd ever touched. I started small, throwing his magazines in the dumpster behind my building. Then I gathered his clothes into garbage bags. The Northwestern sweatshirt went first. I'd always hated that pretentious school anyway. Ma whiz. That's when I found the letter. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now back to where we left off. It was tucked inside one of his textbooks, written in Derek's messy handwriting on hotel stationery. "Darling Rachel," it began. My stomach lurched, but I kept reading. The letter was dated 3 weeks before our wedding. 3 weeks. He'd been planning this betrayal while I was addressing save the dates and confirming the caterer. "I can't stop thinking about what you said at coffee yesterday. You're right. We never really got closure. Maybe we rushed into things too quickly back in college. I know I have obligations, but my heart has never stopped belonging to you. I just need to figure out how to handle everything without destroying too many lives." Too many lives. Like mine was just an inconvenience to work around. The letter went on for 2 pages, detailing their secret meetings, their shared memories, and his growing certainty that he'd made a mistake choosing stability over passion. He signed it "Forever Yours, D," with a little heart next to his initials, the same heart he used to draw on my coffee cups. I threw the letter in the sink and seriously considered lighting it on fire. Instead, I took a photo of it. Evidence. Not that I needed proof of his betrayal, but somehow having it made me feel less crazy. The worst part wasn't even the affair. It was how calculated everything had been. He'd let me plan our entire future, knowing he was planning his exit strategy. He'd watched me stress over seating charts and menu tastings, while secretly dreaming of his ex-girlfriend. He'd let his parents spend thousands of dollars on a wedding he never intended to attend. That night, I finally broke down. I'm talking ugly crying into a container of Ben & Jerry's while wearing his old t-shirt and watching our engagement video on repeat. My neighbors probably thought someone was being murdered. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Thinking of you. Want company?" "Not yet," I replied, still feeling sorry for myself. "Take all the time you need. But when you're ready to plot revenge, I'm your girl." Revenge. The word stuck with me. What kind of revenge could I possibly get on Derek? He was already in Seattle living his best life with Rachel. He'd probably forgotten I existed by now. Monday morning came whether I was ready or not. I had to go back to work eventually. My savings account couldn't handle an indefinite mental health break. I worked as a marketing coordinator for a sustainable fashion startup downtown, and my boss Emma had been incredibly understanding about the whole situation. "Take as much time as you need," she'd said when I called her Saturday night in tears. "And if you want to key his car when you're feeling better, I know a guy who can make it look like an accident." But walking into the office felt like announcing to the world that I was the girl who got dumped at the altar. Everyone had seen the Facebook posts, the Instagram stories, the pictures my aunt had uploaded before quickly deleting them. The whole thing had been humiliatingly public. "Sophie," my coworker Amanda practically pounced on me the moment I walked in. "How are you holding up? I can't believe Derek did that to you." My cousin's friend said she saw them at Pike Place Market yesterday, holding hands. Can you believe the audacity? Pike Place Market. Derek and I had our first official date. Of course that's where he'd take Rachel. "I'm fine," I lied, settling at my desk and trying to focus on the email backlog. Really, just ready to move on. But I wasn't fine. Every notification on my phone made me jump, hoping it might be Derek with an explanation or apology that never came. Social media was a minefield, mutual friends posting sympathy comments that only reminded me of my humiliation. Even worse were the people who were clearly fishing for drama, sliding into my DMs with fake concern and real nosiness. The breaking point came Wednesday afternoon. I was grabbing lunch at the coffee shop near my office when I overheard 2 women at the next table. "Did you hear about that wedding disaster at Cascade Manor last weekend?" one of them was saying. "The groom literally ran off with his ex-girlfriend. Left his poor fiancé standing there in front of everyone." "No way! How humiliating. I would literally die." "I know, right?" I heard the bride's family is from China or something, so it was extra embarrassing because of the cultural thing. Like, now she'll probably never get married. I stood up so fast I knocked over my chair. Both women looked at me, and I saw recognition dawn in their eyes. They knew exactly who I was. "Actually," I said, my voice shaking with anger, "the bride is sitting right here. And she's not Chinese, she's American. And she's going to be just fine, thanks for asking." I left my half-eaten sandwich on the table and walked out, my face burning with embarrassment and rage. This was my life now. I was going to be the cautionary tale people whispered about at coffee shops, the woman who was so unlovable that her fiancé ran away rather than marry her. That evening, I was stress cleaning my apartment when someone knocked on my door. I almost didn't answer. I looked like a disaster, and wasn't in the mood for well-meaning visitors. But the knock came again, polite but persistent. I looked through the peephole and froze. Marcus Mitchell was standing in my hallway, holding what looked like a bottle of wine and wearing a concerned expression. I opened the door a crack, suddenly very aware that I was wearing Derek's old college t-shirt and had mascara smudge under my eyes. "Mr. Mitchell? What are you? How did you?" "May I come in?" he asked gently. "I brought wine. And an apology." Against my better judgment, I let him in. My apartment suddenly felt incredibly small, with his presence filling it. He was even more intimidating up close. Tall, impeccably dressed, with the kind of confidence that comes from never having to worry about money or status. "I'm sorry for showing up unannounced," he said, setting the wine on my kitchen counter. "I got your address from my brother. I hope that's not too intrusive." "Why are you here?" I asked, wrapping my arms around myself. If this is some kind of pity visit. "It's not a pity," he said firmly. "It's respect. What my nephew did to you was unconscionable. I wanted to make sure you were okay, and to tell you that his behavior doesn't represent how the Mitchell family usually conducts itself." There was something about the way he said it, formal but sincere, that made me believe him. "You didn't have to come all the way from San Francisco for that." "Actually, I'm in town for business this week, but yes, I would have made the trip anyway." He paused, studying my face. "You look like you could use a friend." I almost laughed. "I don't think we're exactly friends, Mr. Mitchell. We've never even had a real conversation." "Marcus," he corrected. "And you're right. But I saw what happened at that wedding, and I saw how you handled it. You have more dignity in your little finger than my nephew has in his entire body." Something about his words broke something loose in my chest. Maybe it was the first time someone had focused on my strength instead of my victimhood. Maybe it was the way he looked at me like I was a person worth knowing, not just a casualty of Derek's selfishness. "Would you like some coffee?" I found myself asking. I was just about to make some anyway. He smiled. The first genuine smile I'd seen from anyone in Derek's family since the disaster. "I'd like that very much." As I busied myself with the coffee maker, I snuck glances at him. He was looking around my apartment with what seemed like genuine interest, taking in my bookshelves, my art prints, the succulent garden I'd been nursing on my windowsill. "You have good taste," he observed. "Derek mentioned you studied art history in college." "Art history and business," I corrected. Though I'm not sure why Derek would have mentioned that. We never talked much about my education when we were together. Something flickered across Marcus's face. "That's a shame. Intelligence is a terrible thing to waste." We sat on my small couch with our coffee, and somehow conversation came easily. He asked about my job, my interests, and my family. Real questions, not the superficial small talk I was used to from Derek's relatives. He listened to my answers like they actually mattered. "I have to ask," I said finally. "Why are you really here? This is all very kind, but I can't help feeling like there's something else going on." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee cup. "Can I be honest with you?" I nodded. "Derek has always been weak," he said bluntly. "Even as a child, he took the easy path, made the comfortable choice. My brother Robert has spent Derek's entire life cleaning up his messes and making excuses for his behavior." The words stung, even though I was angry at Derek myself. There was something painful about hearing his family dissect his character so coldly. "I watched you at that wedding," Marcus continued. "I watched you handle the most humiliating moment of your life with grace and dignity. And I thought, what a waste. Here's this remarkable woman, and my spineless nephew threw her away for someone who already broke his heart once." "I don't feel very remarkable right now," I admitted. "I feel pretty stupid, actually." "Don't," he said firmly. "Derek's choices say everything about him and nothing about you. You deserve so much better than what he was offering." There was something in his voice, an intensity that made me look at him more carefully. The way he was looking at me wasn't exactly paternal or avuncular. It was something else entirely. "Marcus," I said slowly, "is this?" "No," he said quickly, understanding my unfinished question. "I'm not trying to take advantage of a vulnerable moment. I just wanted you to know that Derek's an idiot." and his loss is someone else's gain. But there was something in the air between us, a crackling tension that hadn't been there when he first arrived. Something that made my heart beat a little faster, and my skin feel suddenly warm. Whum. This was Derek's uncle. This was absolutely the last person I should be feeling anything for. Whum. But as we sat there in my tiny apartment, talking and laughing like we'd known each other for years, I couldn't shake the feeling that the universe had just dealt me a very interesting hand. Marcus didn't leave that night until almost midnight. We talked about everything: his tech empire that he'd built from a single software patent, my dreams of starting my own sustainable fashion consultancy, our shared love of obscure documentaries and terrible reality TV. The age gap that should have felt weird somehow didn't. He treated me like an equal, not like Derek's leftover. Neo. When he finally stood to leave, he paused at my door. I'm flying back to San Francisco tomorrow, but I'll be back in Portland next month for a board meeting. Would you like to have dinner? Somewhere public, nothing inappropriate. I'd like to see you again. My brain screamed that this was a terrible idea. My heart apparently had different plans. I'd like that, I heard myself say. The month that followed was strange. Marcus and I texted regularly. Nothing romantic, just conversations that ranged from business advice to debates about whether pineapple belongs on pizza. He sent me articles he thought I'd find interesting, and I found myself looking forward to his messages more than I probably should have. Meanwhile, Derek had gone completely silent. No apology, no explanation, nothing. It was like 5 years of my life had been erased overnight. His parents reached out a few times. Patricia called crying and apologizing. Robert sent a stiff email offering to reimburse me for wedding expenses. But Derek himself might as well have vanished into thin air. When Marcus returned to Portland, he took me to a small Italian restaurant in the Pearl District. Nothing too fancy, nothing that screamed, inappropriate date with nephew's ex-fiancée. We talked for 3 hours, and I found myself laughing for the first time since the wedding disaster. Can I ask you something? I said over dessert. Why are you interested in spending time with me? I mean, really. You could have anyone. Marcus set down his fork and looked at me seriously. Because you're brilliant, funny, and stronger than you know. Because when Derek told his family about you over the years, he always talked about how beautiful you were, how sweet you were, how lucky he was. He never once mentioned your intelligence, your ambition, or your incredibly sharp sense of humor. Maybe I wasn't with him, I said quietly. Or maybe he never bothered to look deep enough to see them. That's when I knew I was in trouble. Big, complicated, family-destroying trouble. We started seeing each other regularly when he was in town. Coffee dates turned into long walks through Powell's books. Dinner became weekend trips to wine country. It was gradual, careful, but unmistakably romantic. Marcus was everything Derek wasn't: attentive, curious about my thoughts, supportive of my career goals. He never made me feel like I was too much or not enough. 3 months after the non-wedding, I finally heard from Derek. He called at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, clearly drunk. Sophie, I need to talk to you. My first instinct was to hang up. My second was to hear what he possibly had to say after months of silence. What do you want, Derek? I made a mistake, he slurred. Rachel and I. It's not working out. She's not you. She's selfish and demanding, and she doesn't understand me like you do. The audacity was breathtaking. So you're calling me because your rebound isn't going well? It wasn't a rebound. I thought I loved her, but I was wrong. I love you, Sophie. I've always loved you. Can we try again? I started laughing. Actually laughing. You left me at the altar, Derek. In front of 200 people. You humiliated me and broke my heart, and now you want to try again? Because Rachel isn't what you thought she'd be? People make mistakes. No, I said firmly. Forgetting to buy milk is a mistake. Cheating on your fiancé for weeks and then abandoning her at your wedding is a choice. We're done, Derek. We've been done since the moment you decided Rachel was worth more than 5 years with me. There's someone else, isn't there? He said, his voice turning nasty. I knew it. You moved on pretty fast for someone who was supposedly heartbroken. Actually, I had moved on. Faster than I'd expected. And with someone who would complicate everything in ways Derek couldn't imagine. My love life is no longer your business, I said, and hung up. The next morning, I called Marcus. Derek called last night, I told him. He wants me back. There was a long pause. How do you feel about that? Like I dodged a bullet. But Marcus, there's something we need to talk about. This thing between us. It's getting serious, isn't it? Yes, he said simply. At least it is for me. Then we need to decide what we're doing. Because I'm falling for you, and that's going to cause problems with your family. Let me worry about my family, Marcus said. The question is, are you willing to deal with the complications? Because dating me means dealing with Derek finding out eventually. It means dealing with people who'll say you're with me for revenge or money. Are you prepared for that? I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Yes. Then pack a bag. I'm flying you to San Francisco this weekend. I want to show you my world. San Francisco was a revelation. Marcus's penthouse overlooked the bay, and his life was a perfect blend of luxury and purpose. He showed me his company headquarters, introduced me to his employees who clearly adored him, and took me to charity events where I met other entrepreneurs who were using their wealth to solve real problems. But the best part was how he was with me. He asked for my opinion on business decisions, included me in conversations with his colleagues, and never once made me feel out of place in his sophisticated world. On Sunday night, as we sat on his terrace watching the sunset paint the bay gold, he took my hand. I have a confession, he said. I've been thinking about this since the night I came to your apartment. I'm falling in love with you, Sophia. Completely, irrevocably in love with you. My heart stopped. Marcus, I know it's complicated. I know the timing is terrible and the family situation is impossible. But I also know that life is short and real love is rare. And I'm not going to let either of those things slip away because my nephew is an idiot. I kissed him then, right there on his terrace with the city sparkling below us. It was nothing like kissing Derek. This was electric, passionate, full of promise and possibility. I love you too, I whispered against his lips. But you know this is going to destroy your relationship with Derek. Derek destroyed our relationship when he humiliated someone I care about, Marcus said firmly. His choices have consequences. 2 months later, Marcus proposed, not with a grand gesture or a public display, but quietly, in my Portland apartment, with a ring he'd had custom designed based on a vintage piece I'd admired in a museum. Marry me, he said simply. Not because it's the logical next step, or because we've been together a certain amount of time, but because I want to spend every day for the rest of my life, making you as happy as you make me. I said yes without hesitation. We planned a small ceremony in Napa Valley, just immediate family and close friends. I didn't want a big wedding. I'd learned my lesson about those. But I did want to celebrate this love, this second chance at happiness that had come from the worst day of my life. The guest list was interesting. My parents flew in from Sacramento, thrilled that I'd found someone who valued me properly. Marcus's parents came, confused but supportive when they saw how happy we made each other. A few of his siblings attended, along with some cousins. Derek and Rachel were notably absent. According to family gossip, they'd broken up messily 6 weeks after Seattle, and Derek was now living in his parents' basement, unemployed, and apparently spending most of his time playing video games and feeling sorry for himself. Robert, Derek's father, pulled me aside before the ceremony. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. Not just for Derek's behavior, but for raising a son who could treat someone the way he treated you. You deserved better then, and I'm glad you found it. The ceremony was perfect, small, intimate, full of people who genuinely wanted us to be happy. As Marcus and I exchanged vows overlooking the vineyards, I thought about how differently my life had turned out than I'd planned. A year ago, I thought I knew exactly what my future looked like. Now I was married to a man who challenged me, supported me, and loved me in ways I hadn't even known were possible. Many. The best part? When the minister pronounced us husband and wife, I wasn't just Sophia Mitchell. I was Derek's stepmother. The realization hit Derek about a week after our wedding photos appeared in the San Francisco Chronicle Society section. Marcus had warned me it might happen. His marriages made news because of his wealth and business prominence. Derek called Marcus directly, screaming about betrayal and family loyalty. Marcus listened for about 30 seconds before cutting him off. You had 5 years to appreciate what you had with Sophia, Marcus told him calmly. You chose to throw it away for a woman who'd already broken your heart once. Now she's my wife, and if you have a problem with that, I suggest you examine your own choices instead of blaming everyone else for their consequences. Derek tried calling me next, but I'd blocked his number months ago. He showed up at my old apartment, but I'd moved in with Marcus and didn't leave a forwarding address. According to Patricia, who still called occasionally to check on me, Derek spent weeks ranting about how I'd seduced his uncle for revenge, how I'd planned the whole thing, how I was a gold digger who'd manipulated poor Marcus. The truth was simpler and more devastating to Derek's ego. I genuinely moved on and found someone better. A year after our wedding, Marcus and I started the Sophia Mitchell Foundation, focused on helping women rebuild their lives after major setbacks: divorce, job loss, domestic violence, or in my case, public humiliation. We funded career training, provided therapy services, and offered small business loans to women starting over. Our first annual gala raised $2 million. The keynote speaker was a woman who'd left an abusive marriage with nothing but her children, and had built a successful catering company with one of our microloans. Derek wasn't invited. As I stood on the stage that night, looking out at hundreds of successful women who'd rebuilt their lives from nothing, I thought about that awful day at Cascade Manor. The day that had felt like the end of everything had actually been the beginning of something incredible. I never got my fairy tale wedding with the college sweetheart and the suburban house. Instead, I got something better. A partnership with someone who saw all of me and loved what he found. A purpose that gave meaning to my pain. And the satisfaction of knowing that Derek's worst decision had led to my greatest happiness. My name is Sophia Mitchell, and I'm living proof that sometimes the best revenge is simply living your best life. Derek wanted to humiliate me, but all he did was clear the path for someone who actually deserved me. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the family. During our second year of marriage, Marcus and I attended his nephew's birthday party, not Derek's, but his younger cousin Jake's 21st. Derek was there, looking uncomfortable in an ill-fitting suit that had clearly seen better days. He'd gained weight, lost most of his hair, and had the defeated posture of someone who'd given up on himself entirely. When Jake introduced me to his college friends as my Uncle Marcus's wife, the confused looks were priceless. "Wait," one of them said. "Isn't this the same Sophia that Derek was supposed to marry?" The silence that followed was excruciating. Derek turned red and mumbled something about needing another drink. I simply smiled and said, "Yes, that's me. Though I think we can all agree I made the right choice in the end." Marcus squeezed my hand under the table, and I could see him trying not to laugh. But the real satisfaction came from watching Derek try to navigate family gatherings where I was now the matriarch he had to acknowledge. At Christmas dinner, when Patricia asked Derek to pass the wine to your Aunt Sophia, I thought he might actually choke on his turkey. The financial disparity became glaringly obvious too. While Derek scraped together grocery money from his part-time job at an electronics store, Marcus and I were traveling to our villa in Tuscany, the same region Derek and I had planned to honeymoon in. We sent postcards to the family, always making sure to include warm greetings to all the kids. Marcus found the whole situation endlessly amusing. "I've never seen someone make such a spectacular mess of their own life," he told me one evening as we reviewed applications for the foundation. "It's almost impressive in its thoroughness." The foundation continued to grow beyond our wildest expectations. We opened satellite offices in 3 major cities, launched a mentorship program pairing successful women with those starting over, and created an annual scholarship for women returning to college after major life changes. My story, leaving Derek at the altar, finding love with Marcus, building something meaningful from the wreckage, became a central part of our messaging. Women would approach me at events, sharing their own stories of starting over. Many mentioned how my journey gave them hope that their worst moments might actually be redirections toward something better. It was incredibly fulfilling work, made even more meaningful by the knowledge that Derek's betrayal had inadvertently led to helping thousands of other women. The media attention was substantial. Business magazines profiled our partnership, both personal and professional. Lifestyle publications featured our homes, our travels, our foundation work. Every article mentioned my previous engagement to Derek, usually with phrases like "dodged a bullet" or "blessing in disguise." Derek tried to cash in on the publicity once, giving an interview to a local Portland blogger claiming he'd been misunderstood and that the breakup was mutual. The blogger, who'd done her research, politely demolished his narrative by pointing out that mutual breakups typically don't involve one party fleeing the state with their ex while leaving the other at the altar. The interview made Derek look even more pathetic than before. Comments ranged from "delusional" to "what a loser." He deleted his social media accounts the next day. 5 years post-wedding disaster, Marcus and I celebrated our 4th anniversary with a renewal ceremony at our Napa estate. This time, Derek's entire extended family attended, except Derek himself, who'd conveniently developed a sudden illness. The ceremony was featured in Architectural Digest, showcasing both our relationship and the stunning property Marcus had gifted me for our 2nd anniversary. The final twist came when Derek attempted to reconnect with his uncle for financial help. His electronics store job had ended, his unemployment was running out, and he was facing eviction from the studio apartment he'd moved to after finally leaving his parents' house. Marcus agreed to meet him at an upscale downtown restaurant, the same one where he'd taken me on our second official date. Derek arrived looking desperate and disheveled, clearly hoping for a family bailout. "I need help, Uncle Marcus," Derek began, launching into a sob story about bad luck and unfair circumstances. Marcus listened patiently, then leaned back in his chair. "Derek, I've been very successful in business because I understand the consequences. When you left Sophia at that altar, you made a choice that revealed your character. Every problem you're facing now stems from that moment of selfishness and cowardice." Derek's face flushed. "That's not fair. You stole my fiancé. I fell in love with an extraordinary woman who happened to be available because my nephew was too immature to recognize what he had," Marcus replied calmly. "Sophia makes her own choices, and she chose me because I value what you discarded." The conversation ended with Derek storming out, but not before Marcus delivered the final blow. "If you want help rebuilding your life, I suggest you apply to the Sophia Mitchell Foundation. They specialize in helping people who've made catastrophic mistakes start over." The foundation did receive an application from Derek 3 months later, submitted under a fake name. We recognized his handwriting immediately. The application was politely declined with a note suggesting he might benefit from personal counseling first. Now, 7 years after that disastrous wedding day, I'm sitting in our San Francisco penthouse, planning the foundation's upcoming conference on transforming trauma into triumph. Marcus is reviewing acquisition reports in his study, occasionally calling out interesting passages for me to hear. We're expecting our first child next spring, a daughter we've already decided to name Grace, because sometimes that's exactly what life gives you when you least expect it. Derek sent a wedding gift when Marcus and I married, a cheap picture frame from a discount store with no card or explanation. We donated it to Goodwill, but kept the receipt as a reminder of how far we'd both come. Sometimes I wonder if Derek ever realizes that his moment of selfish panic at our almost wedding created a ripple effect that destroyed his life while elevating mine. If he'd simply been honest about his doubts, if he'd had the courage to end things before the altar, he might have maintained some dignity and family relationships. Instead, his cowardice led to my meeting Marcus, our foundation helping thousands of women, and Derek becoming a cautionary tale about the long-term consequences of treating people as disposable. My revenge wasn't planned or calculated. It was simply living authentically and allowing karma to do its work. And if Derek's still wondering where it all went wrong, well, that's what we call poetic justice. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.